Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to the Coffee Talk. My name is Lynette Phillips. I work with Second to None Human Resource Services. I'm extremely excited to be with you this morning. Today, we're going to be talking about payroll practices. But before we get started, I'm drinking Jamaican Me Crazy coffee. If anyone wants to chat in what they're drinking this morning, I'll be happy to share it with the group. All right, we have some Dunkin' Donuts coffee. K-Cup Dunkin' Donuts coffee to be more specific. Thanks for sharing, Cindy. All right, I am recording this morning and I wanted to let you all know that. If you look in the chat, you'll find out where you can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And please subscribe to my channel on YouTube. Well, actually, subscribe to Second to None Human Resource um, on YouTube. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to get started because I always like to be sensitive to individuals' times. And today, again, I said we're going to be speaking about payroll practices. So, when it comes to payroll, people often say that they get confused or they like taxes and it's something they'd rather not deal with. A lot of people are not informed about payroll. They're not informed about all the different laws and rules that go along with payroll. So they tend to not want to be bothered with it, especially in small businesses. But I want to share a few things with you today. First and foremost, I want to say payroll is not as intimidating as you would think. And if you absolutely positively do not want to be responsible for your payroll, then please look to outsource it to anyone that may be a human resource that runs payroll. Payroll is more within reach than you may think as a small business owner. If you're continuing to do it yourself, I'd like to share some tips today that will hopefully make the process much, much more streamlined and simple for you and your business. All right. So, the first thing I want to share with you today is that a reason why I decided to do this discussion is because of the pandemic that we had hit us last year. I had several individuals come to me and ask, how do they handle their employees that they were paying that they had to lay off or were being terminated as a result of the pandemic? So when I was asked that question, it dawned on me that I could share probably a few tips that would make it easier for you. So the first tip that I want to share with you is you want to make sure that if you're running payroll that you update your forms every year. And when I say forms, I'm referring to a W-4. I don't know if you're aware or not, but W-4s are frequently updated by the federal government. So if you want to find a W-4 form, go to the federal labor Department of Labor site and type in forms in the search bar, and you should find W-4s and I-9s and any other form that you would need to run payroll. All right. So that was the first tip that I wanted to give you, just to update your forms. The second form that you want to update is going to be your local tax form. So if you live in a state, and more specifically a city where your employees pay local taxes, you want to also look at those forms and see if they've been updated for the last year. And the reason why you want to update both forms is because oftentimes those forms will dictate how much money should be coming out of an employee's uh, paycheck for tax purposes. So you want to make sure that you're using the most current form that there is to use. And so the last tidbit I want to give you in this section is, although this is not a consistent payroll form, this form is a form that does need to be updated from time to time, and it's the I-9. So if you're updating your W-4 and your local form, you may want to take some time to set aside and update your employees' I-9 forms. This form absolutely positively doesn't have a whole lot to do or affect an employee's payroll. However, it is a great reminder for yourself when you're looking to update those forms to audit your I-9s and see if any employees need to re-verify their I-9 forms. Why are you asking? You may be asking yourself, am I saying this during payroll? Because a great time for you to inform the employee or touch the employee is during payroll time. So when you're giving out checks or when you're speaking to the employees, if they need to update their I-9, you can slip a little note if you hand out pay stubs, or you can send them a little note via email saying, hey, it's time to update your I-9, and attach a form that says what they would need to do that. So I just wanted to mention that in this area, just to give you kind of an idea of how business payroll flow and keeping in compliance can all work together. So the second tip that I have is for you. If you're using a contractors as a small business, you want to make sure that you're updating your contractors form. What form is that? That's your W-9. If you use contractors, better known this year as non-employees that you compensate, you want to, and you will give them a 1099 at the end of the year, you want to make sure that you re-verify your W-9s, and you also want to make sure that you check again the Department of Labor and see if there is a new form. Why do you want to re-verify? Often contractors change names of businesses, or they may be a part of another business, or they may have sold their business. So you just want to make sure that at the end of the year, when you're going to be giving out 1099s for any contractor, that you have the proper and correct information. You also want to be very specific in making sure that you have the correct address, because you will be mailing 1099s and W-2s to employees as well as contractors. So I just want to make sure that we're all clear. So the forms that I recommend that deal with payroll that you look at, my tip number one was your W-2 form and also your local form. And the second tip was to update your contractor information, paying specific attention to addresses and your EIN number or social security number that the contractor gives you. All right. Tip number three is going to be, when you run your payroll, you always want to review your payroll. In my opinion, this is one of the most important tips that I can give you. I can't tell you how many times I've been with companies or worked with clients, and at the end of the year, a contractor and or excuse me, employees not come up to them and say there were issues with the 1099 that they got or the W-2 that they got. Excuse me. I'm going to take a sip right here. Got to tickle my throat. Excuse me. For an employee, the issue sometimes that we run into is that there have been no federal and or state and or federal, state, or local taxes being withheld for the employee throughout the year. Why is that significant to you? Because oftentimes it becomes a situation where you have a top performing employee that may become disgruntled, because at the end of the year, when the following year, when they file their taxes, they're told that they owe the federal government sometimes thousands of dollars, and sometimes employees are not prepared to pay that amount of money. And it's because they thought that taxes were being withheld from their paycheck throughout the year. Now, I know you're probably looking at me and thinking to yourself, why is that my problem? As the employer, it's not necessarily your problem. It is something that you would have to address at the end of the year, because the employee is going to come to you with questions and concerns. Again, I started this talk out by saying most people don't like to deal with paychecks and taxes, and it's because they're simply not informed like they should be. So a couple things I recommend that you do in this area. The first thing is encourage all your employees to look at their first few pay stubs to make sure that they are having the proper deductions. So if you have benefits coming out, check those. If you have um, federal, local, and state taxes, they need to check those and just make sure that everything looks like it should. If they are missing a deduction, then they need to come to you immediately. And something else that you can do is give them an idea of what those taxes or withholding should be. Just explain to them, give them a little snap sheet with their first pay saying these are some of the deductions you might see, and here's why. All right, so I just want to make sure that I share with you. That is something, this tip is the most important tip that I feel. We definitely don't want to take our high performing employees and risk them becoming unhappy or dissatisfied with us because of something that we could help them look at on the front at the beginning of the year to make them a happier employee throughout the rest of the year. And that would also alleviate our turnover. Okay, so how you as an employer can help is you always get a detail of what your payroll is going to be, and you just may want to scan and make sure that you see that all employees have similar deductions coming out of their paycheck. All right, so again, I just wanted to reiterate the 3 tips are: one is you want to make sure you update all your forms for the employee's payroll. The second tip was to update your contractor information. And the third tip was to review your employee's paycheck. Okay. Now, normally we end the discussions with those tips, but I want to mention a few things. Another thing that I think would be extremely helpful for you as an employer is if you are paying your employees bi-weekly or weekly, I would encourage you to look at 2 things. There are 2 ways that you can pay an employee. You can pay an employee current, and you can pay an employee with arrears, I'm sorry. And I would recommend that you pay your employee with arrears. And that was because if you are paying your employee current, it sometimes makes you have more work if an employee calls off sick and you've paid them already for a day that they didn't work, and it should be a sick day as opposed to a day that they took off. So the work would come in is where now you have to go in and make that change on the following paycheck. So if you're paying current, you may run into that problem more often than not. If you're paying in arrears, then it would give you time. So if an employee calls in sick on Friday, you don't pay them for that week until the following week. So you would have time to make sure that those changes and all that information is correct. So that was a little tidbit I wanted to give you to make sure that you are streamlining your payroll process as much as possible. All right. So if you are following these tips, I want to tell you that you can think about how much time you would save in just making sure you have the proper forms, making sure that your employees are paid in arrears to save you time and money on the back end, and also to make sure you have current addresses to be able to send employees W-2s and contractors 1099 at the end of the year. And my final note that I want to mention is that you should make sure that you create a policy around what your company or your small business practices will be with respect to paydays and payroll. All right. So those were the tips. Hopefully you'll be leaving today and implementing some of them today to save some time and some money and some frustration and headaches. So my DE&I tip of the month is this month we are celebrating women. So I want you to look at your business and see how you can collaborate with a small business and potentially do some business with women business owners. So, and if you are a woman business owner, you can still follow the same tip. You want to make sure that you are contacting or networking with other women that you may be able to partner with so you both can help to grow your businesses together. My name is Lynette Phillips. I'm with Second to None Human Resource, and I'm extremely happy to have shared this time with you today. Again, check the chat and figure out how you can follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Second to None HR. And again, my name is Lynette Phillips. I'm going to open it up now for anyone who might have questions about any of the things that I discussed today. All right, we have a question, and the question is, should I issue a 1099 even if the contractor slash vendor says they don't need one? So my answer is going to be yes. If you have paid a contractor more than $600 for the year, federal guidelines say that you should issue that person a 1099. Now, I'm going to tell you this. This is just something I happen to have run across. If you're paying that vendor with a credit card, then the credit card company will submit the information to the federal government on your behalf. So you would not need to do that. If you are paying that contractor with a check or something that is not a credit card, then yes, and you paid them more than $600, then you should submit them a 1099. So hopefully that answer was answering you the question. Any other questions? All right, I don't see any other questions, and we did finish up a little early today, which is totally fine. Again, hopefully I've shared something with you that is helpful for you in your business, and I will see you next time. Have a fantastic day.
Thank you.